we go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Welcome to Planet 8. I'm your Chief Engineer, Bob, and with me is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. And we're here with a brief message to let you know that we are running some best of Planet 8 episodes. Planet 8 itself is going on a short hiatus, and Karen will explain what's going on there.
Thanks, Bob. Yep, we're going to take a short break. Unfortunately, we're doing this break because our dear Commander Larry has experienced something none of us want to go through, which is a house fire. He and his family are all right, but they are out of their home and trying to sort of pick up the pieces right now and figure out what they're going to do. So in this time period when he's just trying to get his life together and get his family all the stuff they need. We decided, okay, we're going to take a break because obviously the podcast is about the last thing on his mind right now. So with that in mind, as Bob said, we'll do some best of episodes until Larry's able to rejoin us. Now, in the meantime, we have set up a GoFundMe for Larry and his family. So if you're so inclined, if you'd like to donate, that would be wonderful because they've basically lost everything. So you can go to either our Facebook page or our Twitter page, and we have links there for the GoFundMe. If you'd like to donate, that would be marvelous. We'd appreciate the support for him. We hope to be back soon.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, if you've seen our sensor sweeps and things and all the items that Larry has shared over the years, that's all gone. Collection's gone, everything. So they're basically looking for the necessities of life right now. So if you can help out, that would be great. In the meantime, enjoy this best of episode, and we'll try to be back with you live as soon as possible.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Vampires, werewolves, ghouls, ghosts, mummies that come back to life after 3,000 years. Can such things be? Well, I've spent a lifetime doing my best to persuade you, at least for an hour or two in a darkened theater, that there are things that go bump in the night and raise a lump in your throat, a hard knot of terror.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your Mission Commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. By my side, as always, is Chief Engineer Bob in our command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is our reconnaissance officer, Karen. Today's mission takes us to explore classic universal monsters. We scoured Planet 8 and the known galactic universe for an authority who could definitively help us through this episode, and we could not find one. So, in lieu of said guest, we have Lord Bloodraw. And I jest. Welcome, Lord Bloodraw, to Planet 8.
My lords and ladies.
Yes, sir. Lord Bloodraw, we're going to give all his information at the end of the show, but if you're not familiar with him, by the end of the podcast, you most certainly will be. Just a plethora of information. If you get a chance to catch one of his live shows, I highly recommend it. We're going to jump straight into this. Lord Bloodraw, we're talking about Universal monsters, the classics.
Oh, yes.
Do you recall your first viewing of a Universal monster movie? Where were you? What was it? And
it was so long ago, but I believe It was probably around Halloween time. I was a child, I want to say around 10, 11, and I'm pretty sure it was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Yes.
Because one of the earliest memories I have is that animated beginning with the monsters walking against the moonlit sky and just in silhouette.
The Wolfman and then the bones.
Exactly. That's my earliest memory of the Universal monsters. My earliest memory of them as kind of a phenomenon was reading my cousin's copy of Famous Monsters of Filmland. With, I believe, Bela Lugosi from Mark of the Vampire was on the cover. And it just blew me away. I remember sitting there being entranced with this whole world. And then I just caught, as I'm sure anybody living in where I am from, the San Francisco Bay Area, caught all these films on Bob Wilkins' Creature Features.
Right.
And that just opened up the entire world of Universal Monsters to me.
Well, let's kick it over to our chief engineer, Bob.
Yeah, no, definitely. Growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and Channel 2 had the Universal Monster Library. So you'd see it on Creature Features, you'd see it on Chiller Daler Matinee, and you'd even Dying for Dollars every once in a while.
Yeah. Every once in a while. That's right.
Pat McCormick in the afternoon, Bob March in the morning, whatever, they'd be showing movies and calling people and giving money away. But I want to say the first one I saw might have been Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. And, monsters always fighting each other. That always gets my blood going. So, definitely from there, you want to search out all the different ones. And, watching, Creature Features and Bob Wilkins, he ran those quite a bit. So that's what kind of like set them aside from like the other channels that had like the AIP library or something else. 2 had like Universal and Hammer and all that. So you'd see the Universal versions of the monsters, you'd see the Hammer versions of the monsters, and it was definitely hooked from there.
Right. I remember it being a huge deal when the original 1931 Frankenstein played. It was like, oh, this is the first one. This is the original one. This is amazing. And what a captivating film.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not only for the time, but just such a classic. Just the direction, the acting, the breakout performance by Karloff as the monster.
Right. Well, plus
it's amazing.
From there, you see, which I think is the best of all the Universal Monster movies, is Bride of Frankenstein. And just that's a movie I can to this day watch over and over anytime and still enjoy.
Oh yeah.
Let's kick it up to the satellite. Karen?
Hey guys. Well, similar to you guys, although I grew up in the Central Coast region of California, close to Los Angeles, so we got all the Los Angeles stations, and there are quite a few different channels that did the monster shows. And I'm not sure exactly which was the first that I saw, but my mom was a huge fan of old movies and especially of horror films. And so I have a lot of strong memories of the original Frankenstein. And just all of those really impressionistic shots of like the monster coming out from the darkness with the light behind him shining and kind of crouching, and just sometimes not even particular scenes, but just the angles of his head and things like that, that really stuck with me over the years. And the thing is I never even thought of the monster as being scary. There was always that element of sympathy, and especially with, he was always being chased by the villagers and things like that. And so I always saw him as a sympathetic character, and which caused some problems in school because I was always drawing Frankenstein when I was little, and the teachers would contact my mother and say, "Oh, she's drawing Frankenstein. Is there something wrong?" But yeah, certainly those films imprinted on me at a very early age, just like I'm sure most of you.
Oh yeah, that first the shot where you first see the monster, he backs into the room and then turns, and those progressive push-ins on his face. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And the subtlety of the entire film, even before that, it opens with a funeral. And
right.
When, with the doctor and Fritz waiting for the funeral to
and
be
the
over.
bell, from just all the little pieces of the film.
Exactly.
Set the
And
tone.
in digging the body up, he literally throws dirt into a statue of Death's face behind him. He throws dirt in the face of Death. Amazing touch.
Yeah, I'm with Bob and Lord Bloodraw. Growing up in the Bay Area, Bob Wilkins on Creature Features. I would watch it. My mother is a huge fan of genre films and the monster films. And, 6, 7, 8 years old, I'm not understanding everything, but she would explain to me that, the monster is misunderstood. He made a mistake or, something like that. Or same with the creature from the Black Lagoon. They're chasing him. It was humanity that was the villain more so, the monster more so than the monster, quote unquote. But yeah, those films they resonate. And as luck would have it, if you're listening to this podcast as it pops up within about a week, on the 28th of August, Bob, is it 28th?
28th of August.
28th of August. Universal is going to be releasing 36 films? 30 films on Blu-ray. It'll be a set. You can find it online or in a brick and mortar shop. And so we're just going to keep on discussing these Universal monsters, and we go back to Lord Bloodraw. What are some of the iconic moments in some other films, say like Dracula or right? Because that Dracula strikes me as being unique in that there wasn't a lot of music in the film, and in Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein,
There's none.
Yeah. Right.
Swan Lake at the beginning. That's it.
And that's it for Dracula.
In the beginning, but then how did that mood? I mean, they filmed the thing during the day, and then they did the Hispanic version at night.
Yes.
So,
the mood of the film is of the Lugosi version, directed by Todd Browning, is I think captured by the silence. There was a special version that was released with a
Philip Glass,
soundtrack to it. It works, but it's not as creepy as the dead silence.
So it didn't enhance it in any way.
I didn't think so.
Okay.
I didn't think so. No. Just the gothic look of it and Lugosi's portrayal of that character.
Wow.
He does everything almost at just 3/4 speed. And you talk about iconic moments in Dracula. It's not quite an iconic moment, but it impresses me every single time I see it when he's got Renfield sitting in front of him, drawing, with the papers and stuff. And Lugosi says, "This is very old wine." And in the scene, he's staring right at Renfield, staring him dead in the eye, but he's reaching over and grabbing a bottle and a goblet and pouring. And I'm thinking, how did that take multiple shots? Because that movement was just so perfect and so supernatural in the way he's holding Renfield's gaze like a cobra would hold the gaze of a mongoose. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just really, really an incredible shot.
Well, am I right in thinking that Lugosi at the time was almost doing a lot of his dialogue phonetically?
That is... I think that's more of an urban legend. I really do. I mean, he was not as proficient as he became later in English. But, by the time he did the movie, he had played Dracula on Broadway for years.
That's true.
Yeah, he had to petition Universal to do that movie. Here's something interesting about the Universal films. Is, of course, Dracula was the first one in 1931. That's kicked off the entire monster cycle for Universal.
Yeah.
Lon Chaney Sr., that film was essentially meant for him. If Lon Chaney Sr. had lived, he probably would have been Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy. He probably would have been all of those characters.
Wow.
If he had lived. He died, I believe, it was 29 or 30. I think he died in 1930, and the movie was made in 30 into 31.
Right.
And it would be interesting to see what Lon Chaney Sr. would have done with that role, with all of those roles, especially Frankenstein.
Well, some alternate universe that might have happened.
I think so.
No, I know. Originally, we were kind of talking about the Todd Browning version versus the Spanish version.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So
yeah.
If you want to hit on that.
I love the Todd Browning Lugosi version, but that Spanish version, director I believe was George Melford, is technically a better film. What Todd Browning,
they used all the same sets and
all the same sets. Yeah, what they did was they brought in the Spanish crew at night after the day crew had filmed their scenes for Dracula, and they had the advantage of seeing the dailies that Todd Browning was shooting.
Oh, okay.
So the director basically said, "Well, I can do better than that," you know. And Todd Browning, I mean, admittedly, it's almost as if once they get out of that castle and he gets to London, he's almost shooting a play. I mean, it's like you can see it's very stagey. It's almost as though he's shooting something like right off of a Broadway stage, whereas George Melford, his version is much more cinematic. Dracula's appearance in the Lugosi version, Renfield looks up, Dracula's right there, he's in the full shot. In the Spanish and George Melford's version, Renfield hears a sound behind him, turns, and there's this long sweeping crane shot that goes up the stairs and then lands on Dracula.
Right.
That is really, it's wonderful. It's a great moment, you know. The Spanish film doesn't have the performances that the English film does, but it's technically a better film. It would be interesting to see what Melford would have done with Lugosi.
Yeah.
And the cast of the English Dracula.
Yeah, I will say that was the one film where Mother told me, no, he is a monster. Nothing redeeming about Dracula.
Yeah. No, absolutely true. Absolutely right. Yeah, he is. He relishes what he does. He enjoys what he's doing.
He was evil incarnate.
But then what about Imhotep in The Mummy? Because The Mummy is in many ways a remake of Dracula.
Oh yes,
true.
Oh, yes.
So can we say that he's redeemable? He's in love, but he's still a pretty awful guy.
He's obsessed with his love, and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
But bringing back the princess that he's determined to bring back. As a matter of fact, there were entire. It's funny, the Universal monster movies along the way have created these kind of lost moments that would be wonderful to find again. In The Mummy, there was an entire scene. Do you remember the scene where Karloff is there with the female lead of the movie, and they're looking into the pool, and it's the whole thing of how he became the mummy and stole the scrolls. That's a much longer sequence. There were scenes filmed in different historical periods where he catches up with her and loses her again, catches up with her and loses her again. I've seen a couple of stills. One I think was from around the time of the French Revolution or something like that. All of these scenes were filmed, but they were cut out. Yeah,
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, these are kind of holy grails of film that would be wonderful to find and see again.
Let me ask you all this: the difference between Imhotep and Dracula. Imhotep didn't really relish and I don't want to say enjoy it. He was cursed. Dracula, I guess, was cursed, but Dracula was fine with it. I felt that Dracula, what is your guys' take on it? I mean,
I think he enjoyed his power.
Yeah.
Dracula was a monarch, right? He was a monarch before he became a vampire, so it became very natural to him.
Well, his character was based on Vlad the Impaler.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
True.
Whereas Imhotep was a high priest that fell in love and dared the wrath of the gods.
Right. He fell in love with the wrong person.
Well, we don't know that it was her fault.
Well,
they
paid the price.
Exactly. The Mummy. That was an interesting moment in the Universal monster things, in that the Mummy was kind of the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
He never appeared in any of the Monster Rally films, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But also the Mummy series, they're not sequels to the original Mummy.
No.
It's a different Mummy.
Right, a different name.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, too, that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
As far as screen time in the original Mummy, and I suppose it's because Karloff became, the phenom in the industry that he was, there wasn't a lot of footage of him dressed up as the Mummy.
That's right.
It was more Karloff as Imhotep.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because, subsequent films after that, there was a lot more Mummy in it. But did Karloff become like that big off of just the Frankenstein movies? I mean,
I don't know if that's from the size of his stardom, as much as it was kind of an aesthetic choice by the director. Okay. I know that it was shot. They made him up head to toe in that makeup.
It took like 8 hours or 5 hours or something like that. I mean, that was...
Yeah, it's just some ridiculous amount of time. Made the suit no fly, so that was an agonizing day of shooting for Karloff. But they made him up head to toe, and they actually shot footage of him coming out of the sarcophagus, walking over to the young archaeologist, driving him mad and leaving.
Yeah.
And all they did of that was, all they kept in the movie was close up on his face, the hand moving, the hand reaching for the scroll, and then the wrappings kind of going away.
Right.
So, all of that agony.
And as far as like the makeup on that, I mean, it was that was real makeup. There was no masks. There was no
Jack Pierce,
the great Jack Pierce.
Yes.
I was reading something, or maybe I was watching Stefan Taylor put out a great DVD about Jack Pierce, NovemberFire.com, for those of you who'd like to check it out. And I guess you'd mentioned Lon Chaney was going to do Dracula. He passed away. Jack was doing makeup for Universal, and I guess he got away with the skin tone makeup for Dracula, but Lugosi was very, very adamant about doing his own makeup.
Yeah,
and so Jack didn't get that gig other than just the makeup for the face. It wasn't until Frankenstein that he got to ply his trade, and I mean that makeup to me, that when you think of the Frankenstein monster,
iconic,
right?
Well, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. That's when Jack Pierce got his revenge on Bela Lugosi.
Oh yeah, yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah,
wasn't Lugosi going to play the Frankenstein monster?
He was lined up to play the Frankenstein monster. Now, legend has it that he turned it down because it was not a speaking role, and he didn't want to be under the makeup. That could be partially true, but the script he was also given did not have any of the kind of pathos built into it. The monster was just this killing corpse. He was just this killing machine lumbering around. So it's hard to say. All of those things probably figured into his decision, and probably did major damage to his career. Lugosi could not catch a break after Dracula. He really couldn't.
Lugosi's performance in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman as the monster was compromised as well, right? Because originally the monster was supposed to be blind.
Right. And spoke. And
they took his lines out, too.
Right.
Yeah. But he was supposed to be blind, and the studio said, no, he can't be blind. But they had already shot all these scenes where Lugosi's kind of walking with his hands straight out like he's feeling his way around.
Right.
And so that's actually probably where, like, the Frankenstein sort of, everybody thinks of Frankenstein, the caricature of walking along with his arms out and all that.
Oh, yeah.
But...
Karloff never moved in that way. His movement.
No, Karloff was very, very human. The way he moved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Glenn Strange mimicked that, and then every monster kid mimicked Glenn Strange.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So with finishing off with Jack Pierce, because we're going to talk about the monsters, not the maker of monsters. He did work with Lugosi again on White Zombie, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, he did.
So he was able to do the makeups on that, and that's. it'll be for another podcast, but I've always had a problem with zombies and ghouls, because at one point in time, ghouls were zombies, and then the zombies became ghouls. One being flesh-eating, one being Haitian. Yeah, that's another podcast.
Oh, there's a topic for a podcast. Yeah. But I will just say that White Zombie is my favorite Lugosi performance.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's wonderful in Dracula, but that character of Murder Legendre in White Zombie is phenomenal.
I was actually at one of Lord Blood-Raw's live showings of that film, and part of the fun of going to some of these shows is it's one thing to watch it at home, even if you have a 64-inch Dolby Digital, blah blah blah, in a shared environment with like-minded people and fans, and just vibing off of each other. It's like a concert or any other kind of live event. These are just wonderful, wonderful opportunities.
Well, just seeing it on a big screen. Because they were intended to be seen on the big screen.
Yeah. We're going to go over to Chief Engineer Bob. One of the things that strikes me, let's just get into it. Bob's a big fan of Creature from the Black Lagoon. When was the first time you saw the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Bob?
It had to be on Creature Features.
Okay.
Bob Wilkins. And I've since, of course, seen it on the big screen.
Was it 3D or was it just...
It was just flat.
The show. Okay.
The first time I saw it 3D, I believe, was at the UC Berkeley Theater. And they had a showing of it. But we did back in, I want to say it was 2006, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We did all 3 Creature films through Bay Area film events at the Castro Theater. And we showed the first 2 in 3D, Creature and Revenge of the Creature, and then Creature Walks Among Us flat because it was never filmed in 3D. And those were the first times I saw real quality 3D prints of those movies. And because these weren't the red and blue lens type 3D. This was like the anamorphic or whatever 3D. And if you ever get a chance to see it that way, that's definitely the way to see it. And I think the Universal Blu-ray, the Essentials package, has it 3D for those of you with 3D TVs. And that is a really good 3D version. I think that's better than any other 3D movie I've seen on TV.
Really?
Just the scene with the claw and the rock just comes right out into your living room.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's really, 3D movies that are shot 3D today, they don't want to be all gimmicky. So they don't do things like, they're swimming underwater with a spear gun and it goes right into the screen, But the Creature didn't go overboard in that. It did have things that come out of the screen, bubbles come out of the screen and things, but it wasn't that sort of like coming at you, shock type stuff.
It wasn't a Three Stooges.
Yeah, definitely. And that Creature show we did, we had Julie Adams, who played the main actress
for the first film
in Creature from Black Lagoon.
Wow.
We also had Ben Chapman, who wore the Creature suit on the land. Rico Browning was Creature underwater, and they were really, Julie Adams was one of the nicest people you ever want to meet, and Ben Chapman was just a kick. He unfortunately passed away since then, but then we also had a nice opportunity to show it on the big screen at AT&T Park after a Giants game on the scoreboard screen, and we had John Stanley, who was one of the Creature Feature hosts, host it, and that was really cool. Everybody got to come down and after the game, sit on the field, watch the movie,
right.
And probably the funniest thing, and this is a total side story, is I got a call from Greg Kinn from the Greg Kinn Band, and he was a DJ at the time on KFOX in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he's like, "Hey, I hear you're showing Creature from the Black Lagoon." He goes, "Do you need a host?" And I said, "Well, we've got John Stanley from Creature Features because this is Creature Features night at the Giants game." And then he said, "Well, I love Creature Features. Can I introduce John Stanley?" So I ended up introducing Greg Kinn, and Greg Kinn introduced John Stanley, and then John Stanley introduced the movie. But yeah, no, he wrote a book. It was a horror show novel by Greg Kinn.
Greg Kinn.
Yeah, he's a big fan of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, anytime I get a chance to show the Creature, anytime, I'll do it. We also did a show with with Frank Woodward's Men in Suits documentary, and we paired that up with Revenge of the Creature, with Lord Bloodra as one of the guests.
I was at that show too.
Yeah. So I mean, the Creature, definitely. You know, I've got a little Creature area in my basement with the pinball machine and all. Definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And even though it was only 3 movies,
Right.
You know, it still made a big impression on me.
I'm going to say something slightly controversial.
Sure.
I love Creature
You
from the
hated
Black
it.
No. Love Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think it's an incredible film. When I think of the classic Universal monsters, I never think of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the only reason is there's nothing supernatural about the Creature from the Black Lagoon. He's a cryptid. He's essentially what he is. He's kind of the
underwater version of
swamp.
Bigfoot. I was going to say, you're right.
Exactly, right. When I think of the classic Universal monsters, I always think of something supernatural or mad science of the Universal monsters. I love the Creature, and I think that
the
especially that first film is amazing.
The Creature's been lumped in with them, obviously, for marketing purposes.
For marketing purposes.
But if you think about it again, too, I mean, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula, that whole thing, with Transylvania and, you know, sort of the European landscape, and you never really know what time period this is.
Oh, yeah.
Because over there, it seems very like, okay, it could be like the 1800s or something. But in the Wolfman, when Lon Chaney comes in as Lawrence Talbot, he's from, quote, modern times.
Right.
You know, he's a guy from like the 40s.
Yeah, he's there to repair a telescope.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of like, where is this strange land?
Yeah,
you know?
I love that about those.
And so the Creature being in the 50s was in the 50s, and it was taking place at that time. It was modern for the time. And so he never mixed it up with them. He never would have been in a swamp in Transylvania or whatever. Although he's really old, maybe migrated.
That's what I was thinking. Not that we know of. Not that we've seen. Walker?
But I was thinking the other day along the same lines here, because I was thinking the same thing as Lord Bloodrod, that Creature really is separate from the original, more supernatural Universal monsters. But if we want to play the what if game, if Universal had decided and gone full bore and established a new coterie of monsters, you know, I mean, when you sort of had like the mole people, but that didn't really take off.
Yeah.
But, you know, they could have gone the whole science route. You could have had, you know, this whole new group of monsters maybe that were based off of radioactivity or whatever, that would have taken the next step and been, you know, you could have had the Creature as the anchor, just like maybe Frankenstein or whatever was the anchor, the big brute guy. And then what would these other monsters, these humanoid monsters, have been? Because we had plenty of big bugs and other stuff, but what would the humanoid sympathetic
they did all mix it up in Monster Squad.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
But again, it was like, you get the fish out of water, so to speak, right?
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't belong because he's not.
Fish out of water, exactly.
So you'd have Creature from the Black Lagoon, some form of Sasquatch, right? Or a skunk ape, or, you know, whatever.
Right.
You know.
Well, if you're going with radiation as the catalyst, you could kind of semi-fit the Invisible Man in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some kind of
radiation or something.
50-foot woman.
Right, yeah.
A blob.
Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
Actually, we should do a thing on cryptozoology, actually.
Yeah, we should.
You know, amongst us, I have gone squatching. I don't know if anyone else has gone
have
squatching.
You really?
I actually spent the night in the Bigfoot Inn.
Any luck?
Nah. Had a Bigfoot steak at the Bigfoot Diner. That was
as close as you got.
Yeah.
You know, it's just Chewbacca, like, scouting out locations.
Right, yeah.
With a distant cousin.
Right.
Walker, let me ask you. Tell me something about the Wolfman.
I'll tell you something about the Wolfman.
Wolfman's got nards.
Yes, we all know that now. Well, I think of all the monsters, I would say poor Larry Talbot, you know, he's the most sympathetic, right?
I agree.
Because he, you know, he just, after he finds out that he's the Wolfman, he simply wants to die. He's on some sort of horrible assisted suicide quest.
Yeah.
it's Lon Chaney Jr.'s best role. It's the one that he would tell everybody was, that's his baby, and he was really excited about, and really the one he seemed to care the most about. And I think you have also in the first Wolfman. Initially, as far as I understand, there was also the idea in the initial script that it could have all been in his mind, that Talbot might have been thinking he was a Wolfman, and we wouldn't necessarily know if he was or wasn't. But then when they decided, we're going to do the full makeup and everything, then it was pretty much, yeah, he's a Wolfman.
They kind of reprised that idea in Abbott and Costello, because it's like Abbott didn't quite believe that he was the Wolfman.
Oh, yeah.
When he called, and he's like, well, you stop barking at me. Sorry, Walker, I didn't mean to go off on the side. Go ahead and finish your thought. Sorry.
No, but I think I like that concept, and I think if you watch the movie, there's still some elements of that where you kind of question his sanity at certain times. That maybe he isn't turning into something, but the fact that we see the transformations pretty much sells it. And I do really love the makeup. I love the transformations, the moodiness of it all, and you could argue that they have some of the best supporting actors in that, especially Maria Ospinskaya. I just love and adore her.
And Lugosi in a small
Bella, I was going to say, was in there too.
Very short, doesn't get to say a whole lot, but as Maliva's son, of course, bites Larry and starts this whole thing. Actually, I think also wound up, he was the one who attacked Larry's brother, which is what brings Larry back to, it's Wales, but they never say Wales out loud. And just kind of an odd situation where we're supposed to believe that this big burly Lon Chaney Jr. is actually an Englishman who's been over in America for a while, and little Claude Rains is his father. But it's okay. We'll roll with it.
I have to say something. All these years, I never thought about that, Walker. It just now made me think. Oh my God, that's true.
He just ruined the film for you.
Once again, Walker. No,
the thing that always amazed me about the Wolfman, especially his first transformation, is that he turns from meek, mild Larry Talbot into a raging beast, and still has it in his mind that he changes his clothes and has the nice slacks and the shirt on as he goes off into the countryside. And
that's right. Still neat and discounts.
That's right.
I did want to ask you. I've got two questions I wanted everybody to throw out to everybody, and one of them I'm going to wind up because the conversation has gone this direction. I'll reverse the order I had in mind. The first thing, since we're on the Wolfman, of course, the Wolfman is the only one of the original monsters that was only played by one actor.
That's true.
Lon Chaney Jr., only person to play the Wolfman. Is there anybody, put on your what if foil hats, guys, is there anybody else in that whole 1940s time era of Universal films that you think could have played a good Wolfman? And then I'll ask my second question after you guys go around.
I would say Wolfman, yes. Talbot, no. I don't think anyone else could have played Larry Talbot as well as Lon Chaney Jr. did.
That's a good point.
You can slap that Wolfman makeup on anybody and they can run around the countryside, but to garner the sympathy and the pathos that Lon Chaney Jr. did with his portrayal of Lawrence Talbot, I don't think you could do it. I don't even think like a Karloff could pull that off.
It would be interesting to see Karloff try and pull that off.
Well, Karloff was originally thought of for the Wolfman.
Oh, really?
That's right.
At the very beginning, he was originally said I wasn't going to do it. Wow. I'm going to say no. I can't. I mean, if you go outside of the Universal films, maybe like a Paul Muni or someone like that, or maybe no. I cannot picture anyone else playing either the Wolfman or Larry Talbot, just because of the physicality of it. You need a big guy to be an imposing Wolfman.
Well, it's for me, I love werewolf movies in general, and I really think that the other actor who pulled off being a werewolf well, or the best, was Michael Landon. And I was a teenage werewolf. Because you think of it, I was a teenage werewolf, cheap 50s AIP movie, but no, man, you look at that thing and you watch that movie, and because he's not sympathetic like a Lawrence Talbot, but he's a troubled teen going through, all the problems of, his mother's gone, dead, whatever. He's being just raised by a single parent father, and he's getting in fights in school, and he's got all these problems. They're sending him to a psychiatrist. Never go to Whitbissell if you have to go to a psychiatrist. But he goes to a psychiatrist, and just I think and considering that was his first role, I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
So give me Michael Landon and Lon Chaney Jr.
Hormones and a curse doesn't mix well.
Werewolves are full.
Well, it's. I'm trying to remember now. It's been a while since I've seen that film, but it's not a curse, right? With
the teenage.
It's scientifically induced by the psychiatrist through this chemical he had and hypnosis.
Yeah.
And so he injected him with a chemical, and he hypnotized him, and then brought him back to his primal state, which you would think would be an ape,
people,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it's a werewolf.
Yeah.
But so it's definitely not a curse, or he was never bitten by a werewolf, and the people he bit or killed or whatever never became
werewolves. Still trying to wrap my head around Karloff as Talbot. What do you mean, curse?
Yeah, no. Although I would buy him as the age differences would probably be weird. I could buy him almost more as Claude Rains' son.
Yeah. And the English look, he looks like he's from Welsh.
Yeah. What do you think, Larry?
I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say Peter Lorre, just because I like the way he sounds.
But could he be sympathetic?
He's not too physically imposing, though.
No, yeah.
He'd be more like a rat man.
Yeah, I was going to say a little furry Peter Lorre coming at you on a moonlit night. That's scary.
That's Abbott and Costello meets the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right. The rat man. That's right. And I'm just going to add the amazing thing about the original Wolfman film is you watch that film and you think, this is from old Eastern European legend. Kurt Siodmak made all of that up.
That's
really
all of it. None of it comes from original folklore. I mean, there were werewolves in folklore, but it was a thing where you had to become you had to want to become a werewolf, and there was a satanic ritual that you would go through, and
so no wolf's bane, no moon, and silver bullet,
none of that. Kurt Siodmak invented all of it.
Well, it's amazing that carried through so many werewolf movies that followed.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, let me ask my second part of my question for you guys.
Yes, that was a very good question.
Yes,
by the way.
thank you.
And I would encourage listeners to put down your thoughts on our Blogspot page. Who would you envision of that classic list of actors playing Talbot and or the Wolfman? Go ahead, Walker.
So now it's sort of a reversal, because we also just talked about Bela Lugosi playing Frankenstein. We know there were 4 actors who played the Frankenstein monster. Now, other than Boris Karloff, because I believe you all have good taste, which other actor is your favorite Frankenstein monster? Or if you really want to say somebody other than Karloff, go ahead.
Before we get into that, I'd like to know what Karen's answer was to the Talbot Wolfman question.
I honestly, I'm like Bob. I think I could see a number of actors who could pull off the Wolfman. But I just can't imagine anybody doing Larry Talbot. He's so... so sad. He's so tormented. And I tried to think of different actors from that time period, and especially ones who had been in Universal films. And I don't know. I just couldn't come up with anybody who could really do both. So I think that role, he just owns it, and that's all there is to it.
All right.
Lionel Atwill, maybe? No.
So now we're going back to our favorite Frankenstein monster.
So
Witch
Bella?
Frankenstein.
Well, wasn't it Jack Pierce that his favorite to make up was actually Glenn Strange?
Yeah, I believe so.
I know that he
thought
collaborated
Glenn
with
Strange
Karloff.
had the perfect physical features in his face to be the monster, even more so than a Karloff or anyone else.
I'd heard that.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to say Karloff was the best. But,
Oh, yeah.
So, aside from Karloff, then.
Yeah, well,
You got
we can go
three
back. You can go
others.
back to Lon Chaney Jr. and Ghost of Frankenstein.
He was quite good in that.
I'm sticking with Peter Lorre. No.
Well, I just think, for mine's always Fred Gwynn. But
of
no,
the monsters.
Really, it's like I think Lugosi. You can't really count Lugosi because his portrayal of the monster was compromised, as we talked about before.
Yeah.
So, what would his portrayal? What would have it been like if he had dialogue, or he wasn't supposed to be blind and he was just acting like the monster? But yeah, I mean, it's rough because I mean, Glenn Strange. It's like, okay, was Glenn Strange's portrayal, was that a good portrayal, or was it just sort of a conglomeration of Frankenstein's up until then?
Yeah.
You know? That he just carried it on almost like, a generic Frankenstein.
Yeah.
You know? But,
Yeah.
I liked his portrayal. I mean, I saw the original Frankenstein, but I love Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. That to me is just
Oh yeah.
and maybe it's the guys that are kind of vibing off Frankie and Drac and stuff. But
Yeah. I think for me, I go with Strange after Karloff just because of mostly the aesthetics. I think he looks the most like the way the monster should look, because for me, I mean, Bela just looks dreadful to me.
Yeah, the face is way too round.
Yeah,
and the same kind of with Chaney. I mean, he's just got this like
too thick
brawler kind of look. I want a more cadaverous monster, so that's just my 2 cents.
what about appearance versus portrayal, though?
Well, they're all pretty much brainless after a certain point. They're getting hit by lightning so many times, and even by Son of Frankenstein, you start to see the brain damage with Karloff.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
he starts to lose any personality after a while. I guess he's still got a little in Ghost of Frankenstein, and then you get the brain transfer with Igor.
Right.
I don't know. I'll still probably go with Strange.
So is Igor Frankenstein through all the rest of the films?
Igor is the monster after Ghost of Frankenstein. That's why he was supposed to speak in Lugosi's voice. That's why they cast Lugosi. Supposed to speak in Lugosi's voice and also be blind because the blood types didn't match and they didn't feed the optical nerves.
Wow.
Science. So that's why
I just thought it was because he landed in a sulfur pit.
Well, that didn't help. But being, talking about those holy grails of lost films, all of those scenes with Lugosi speaking as the monster were shot. Where they are now, if there are any out there, who knows? I hold out hope that it might be found. But,
that would be cool.
Yeah. I got to say, in Ghost of Frankenstein, Chaney was probably given the most to do of any other actor who played the monster, because he expresses desires, he expresses wants. There's the scene where he gets the little girl and wants her brain in his head instead of Igor's brain. I've got a couple of controversial theories about Igor and the monster too. But
he does things for.
We'll leave that for. Leave that for Planet 8 After Dark.
There you go. Right, yeah. But I'm going to say Chaney, because I think that Ghost of Frankenstein was probably the last film in which the monster was an actual character. and wasn't just a lumbering robot. Because all the other films, it seems like they're just trying to fix him. The monster's sick. We need to get him up to full strength, and they get him to full strength. He's there for 5 minutes, and then the movie ends. Right.
Yeah.
So
true.
I'm going to say Chaney.
All right. Good answers. Let me ask you guys this.
Yes.
We touched on Dracula, Mummy, Creature,
right.
Frankenstein,
yes.
Wolfman, other classic Universal monster. We're going to have to talk about the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
We have to. That's probably my least favorite of all.
Is it really?
Yeah, and I don't know why. I was never into the Invisible Man films. In fact, when all the DVD sets were coming out, I bought all except for the Invisible Man because I thought it was more.
Or did you buy it and it's just invisible?
No, I just I don't know. I always thought it was more of a gimmick than anything else.
Well, it's definitely
maybe like the original, the original film. Yes, but then all the sequels just got real silly and whatever. So
I mean, that could be said about some of the Frankenstein sequels too. But
and the Mummy to the extreme. But no, I was just never into the Invisible Man character.
I love the original Invisible Man, and the Invisible Man Returns with Vincent Price. Okay. That was his first horror performance, really.
Really?
The Invisible Man Returns was his first touching on horror themes. Invisible Man, really fun film, amazing special effects.
Oh yeah.
Only touched on some of the motifs of the original novel. Well, if you want to talk about that, Frankenstein didn't touch on much of the original. But, I enjoyed it overall. But then again, was he a monster?
Right.
Was he a monster? I don't know. He was definitely
a lunatic.
He was a lunatic.
Yeah. Well, it's like Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's not really a monster. It's just that you're taking this thing out of its habitat and, you know...
he was a mad drug addict, a mad invisible drug addict is what he was. Yeah, when you boil him down,
and then they screwed him up chemically.
Yeah, right.
Made him worse.
Yeah, made him worse.
It's like, Karen.
Well, I like the first one. It's probably another one of those properties that when they tried to milk it, you've got diminishing returns. The first one is great. There's a lot of amazing for the time. The effects were amazing. Some classic scenes, and I was thinking about the effects too in these films. And of course now, people look at them and say, "Oh, look at that! It's obviously a, miniature castle or this, that, or the other." But as a kid, you watch these movies and you're just like glued to the screen. And if you guys don't mind me digressing a little bit here.
Not at all.
I was just thinking the other day, because I was rewatching some of these films, and I remember when before when Universal milked us before for a box set that, what was it, the Blu-rays that came out, or whichever set. I forget.
Laser discs.
I bought so many sets, but I hadn't seen Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in years, and I was really excited. I'm going to watch Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and I had all these memories of that, the fight and all the other stuff in it, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. And I put it in, and there's that in the beginning where, Talbot turns into the Wolfman, and he's running around the town, and he's sneaking behind these crates. Yeah. And he attacks this police officer. And in my mind, I still had my 8-year-old memory of oh my God, he climbs to this huge pile of crates and he leaps down and he assaults this police officer. Well, in reality, he kind of hops on top of this one crate that's about 2 feet high, and then he kind of hops off and he jumps behind this guy. And I'm watching this and I'm like, what the hell, did I miss something? I rewind it, I go back, I'm like, oh, okay. And and then we get to the lab fight, and it's sort of like, oh, they're kind of rolling on the floor. Okay, the water came, it's over. And it wasn't like it was disappointing, because I still enjoyed it and everything. But you realize, now you go and you watch some of these movies, It's just like we saw a movie the other night. I won't say what it was. Maybe it was something really awful, like The Rock's latest film. Anyway, but the CGI and stuff that they do, every human being is beyond superhuman, and they're like jumping 500 feet, and they're doing all these things, and so we're like conditioned to see all these insane stunts and stuff, you know. And now I go back and watch one of these movies, and it's sort of like, oh, the Wolfman hopped 2 feet.
Well, you know, that one in the lab fight, the one shot that always got me, and still to this day I'm impressed, is when Wolfman is on top of that one piece of machinery, and Frankenstein grabs it and tips it, and you know he falls off. That was actually a great stunt, I thought. Yeah.
When's the last time you saw the film, Bob? No, just kidding.
Very recently. I watch these all the time. No, but
that shot works. That shot works pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and
I mean, obviously they're all on wires or whatever, but it's like, you know. But
it's still
very cool
magical. But
No,
it's just kind
yeah,
of
I hear what you're saying.
You know, you go back and you see some of the stuff, and you're like, you know, but for me, I'll always love them because they're in my heart, and it's stuff I grew up with, you know.
Well,
and I don't really want to see somebody go back and like do a Van Helsing again. That was
well, I mean,
or hopefully they don't go in and CGI and fix up quote unquote scenes, and then it's like, oh, you know, okay, well, CGI Karloff doing this or Chaney doing that. It's like, no, just.
Well, I was always just so amazed that, I mean, everybody wants their Avengers. Everybody wants their film franchise. And Universal did it.
Yes.
You know, 70, 80 years ago.
They did it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and so it just amazed me that they couldn't do it again. And they kicked it off with a really bad mummy movie with Tom Cruise and just shot themselves right in the foot. And they didn't realize, well, okay, it was a crummy movie. Let's get one of the other ones out there. But, I mean, the one Wolfman with Del Toro. Yeah,
I
was
loved
good.
that film.
Yeah.
That would have been a perfect
There's
one to
your
kick
kickoff.
off from.
Yes.
But
I agree.
not this mummy thing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think that nobody involved in Universal Studios today ever saw any of those movies.
Right.
Because they're saying, you know, the entire premise was, well, we're going to build a monster universe just like Marvel's universe. It's like, no, Marvel built their universe years after Universal built their monster universe.
And see, people have to give Kevin Feige credit because he has orchestrated this thing from the get-go.
Right.
And he has a love and a passion for the characters, for the genre, for the books, the source material, and there's a reverence. And look, a lot of fanboys have tried to do a lot of, and I'm thinking Jack Snyder off the top of my head, tried to do justice to some properties out there, and they, you know, had varying degrees of success. And I think the same thing with the Universal monsters. I still haven't seen that Dracula film that came out where they tried to make him into a super hero or a hero kind of person.
That's the problem. They're trying to make all the monsters into superheroes.
I'm with Karen though. You watch something like from your youth, and this happened to me with the Star Trek animated series. It comes on Sundays, and I'm watching it. I'm like, oh wow, this really stinks. I mean, the dialogue, the stories are great, but it's just it's like watching those Marvel cartoons. It's the same
beyond limited animation.
I love those Marvel cartoons. Let me tell you,
I love them too, but they're a little hard to watch. It's good as background noise, but
well, going back to what you said about the original Universal films kind of being like a world out of time. You know, you don't know what time period you're in or what country you're in or whatever. That is exactly what Universal is missing in trying to launch. They feel they've got to do it in the modern age, or the kids aren't going to relate. You know, they don't realize that the magic in that is it's some far off world and land where this stuff exists,
and it can work today. We were talking about today. Incredibles 2. They don't give you any reference to whether it's taking now, 20 years ago, 20 years from now.
Sure.
It works, you know?
There was an amazing series on Showtime that I'm blanking on what it was called. What was it? Penny Dreadful. Penny Dreadful.
Yes. That was very good.
That's how you do the Universal Monsters. That's how you do it. And they did it right there. They laid it out for Universal. Here you go. This is what it should look like.
You can't tell me with people going crazy over like Game of Thrones that you couldn't have a monster universe with castles and countrysides and whatever. You know.
We need to bring Lord Bloodraw back for a Penny Dreadful.
Gladly.
It lasted all of 3 seasons.
Yeah.
I think there's a graphic novel or a comic book
there is.
that they tried to...
Yes.
And I haven't gotten that yet, but...
I have to get that.
My... I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, start watching the episodes now, so when we finally do the podcast, you can catch up. It's done in the Victorian period, so there's no castles or anything like that.
Right.
But, my God, I mean, they just brought everyone into that.
They brought everyone in.
And it was very organic and anyway,
wonderful show. But that's how you do it.
That's how you do it. I agree.
I have a question for you guys.
Yes, sir.
I know we're talking about the well. First of all, Frankenstein. I think we can all agree that the monster Frankenstein has the best character arc of any of the characters in the Universal monster films. You can follow him from creation through his apex in Bride of Frankenstein, where he's the most intelligent, most functional, to his slow descent into just a shambling
Igor.
Yeah, right, exactly. Into a shambling, Hulk. What is your favorite non-Universal adaptation of Frankenstein? Either just a Frankenstein movie or the original Frankenstein film.
Anyone go. You know, there was actually...
and Bob goes.
Well, I mean, everybody's silent, so someone has to talk.
Go ahead.
Might as well be me. There was an amazing made-for-TV adaptation. Yes. And it was a two-parter, right? So it was pretty long, because I think the whole thing is like 3 hours or something, because I think it was like 2...
Okay, you're not talking about the one I'm thinking of, but go ahead.
I was thinking of Frankenstein, the True Story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure it was like on 2 nights.
Yeah.
And so it was 2... So
where they had the body parts boiling in in a tub of water or something.
Right.
Carradine played the monster, right?
Polydali, yeah. James Mason.
Was it James Mason?
Is in it.
Oh, you're
James
right.
Mason's
You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was,
is that
point,
DVD,
that
Bob?
was the... I think it is.
It is out,
and to that point, I think that was the truest adaptation of the original
as he started
novel.
to decay and stuff.
Yeah. And he's not really a monster per se.
Yeah.
He's just he was reanimated by dead parts, but then things start going wrong, and he's decaying and things. But I thought that always stuck out in my mind as a good adaptation.
Walker?
Well, since I'm the comic book nut,
Frankenstein Jr.
I was
No, I know where she's going.
Come on, Buzz.
You think you know where I'm going? There was a graphic novel put out a couple of years ago by Dark Horse called Frankenstein Underground.
Okay, yeah.
And it was by Mike Mignola, the guy who does Hellboy, and an artist called Ben Stenbeck. And my memory is not this good. I had to actually do a quick lookup. I did a review of this a couple of years ago on our old Bronze Age Babies blog. But it's a really cool story about the Frankenstein monster having to go rescue some people in basically, if you have ever read any stuff about like underground civilizations, people living under the earth, that kind of thing. He finds this civilization underground, and there's all these Cthulhu-type cultists. Ooh. And so it's not really an adaptation of the novel, but I was fascinated with it. It is just a beautiful work of comic art and a great story. So it probably doesn't really answer your question, because when I think of movies and things, I can't come up with anything to match up to the Universal one in my mind. So that'll be my
comic adaptations are perfectly viable.
Yeah, sure. I thought she was going to go with the classic Marvel Frankenstein.
Well, nothing really beats Mike Plug. If you can get Mike Plug art on a comic, and especially a horror comic, I'll thumbs up on that.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking just with Karloff being as iconic, you know, when people think Frankenstein's monster, they think Karloff.
Yeah.
If I think of a comic book version, it's that Marvel, just like their zombie,
Monster,
the Marvel zombie. It's like boom, that's
Yeah.
You know, and I'm going over in my head, The Bride. Sting was in it, and I can't think of the name of the actor. It was Frankenstein. That was a good story, but not so good for the monster. What was the one that
Andy Warhol,
which has one of my favorite movie lines ever, and this is a family podcast, so I can't say it.
Planet 8 After Dark.
I think Robert De Niro did a good job. It was an interesting take. He's playing the flute in the cave, and I can't remember who he's talking to, but he's wondering, am I the creation playing the flute, or is it the brain that my creator gave me that's playing the flute, or is it the left hand that it belonged to someone else, or the right hand?
How can I do this?
Yeah, I will never know if it's me or them or us or what. That was really interesting. But by far, besides Karloff, my favorite Frankenstein is always going to be Young Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Boyle.
To me, Peter Boyle. Oh, my God. Just
that.
I love that film.
That is a really good one.
Exactly. Really good one. Wow. Oh, smoke is good. Wow.
And I can always bring up Frankenstein Conquers the World.
There
I was
you
going
go.
to say, there's that great War of the Gargantuas connection, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That was a good question.
So I got to say my favorite. The reason I
was going to say,
is there anything left for
Blood
you?
Raw?
back in the 70s, Dan Curtis, who did Dark Shadows, did a series of late night movies. He did Dracula, he did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he did a version of Frankenstein with an actor named Bo Svensson.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I remember.
As the monster. And I recently saw it again. It's on Amazon Video, on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And I recently saw it again. I remember loving it when I saw it, but I was a kid, and it was years ago that I'd seen it. His portrayal of the monster is one of the most heartbreaking, touching. He's never frightening, like the original Frankenstein, like Karloff's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He's never all that frightening, but he is so touching, and his performance, I can only describe it as a dramatic Herman Munster. Because, not in the look or anything, and the look is nothing like Karloff's Frankenstein or Herman Munster, but he always has this childlike little, like, kind of screwed up grin on his face, like Herman does, you know. But instead of being that childlike, he's plotting things to do to his master, or he's just trying to communicate with someone and trying to reach out and trying to be loved by someone. It is fantastic. I believe it's been released on DVD. I'm pretty sure. I know it's on Amazon.
I'm going to check
Dan
that
Curtis's
out.
Frankenstein is really wonderful. Jeff,
do they have the Dracula and the other stuff on there too? Do you know, or just the Frankenstein?
I haven't found it there. I've got Dan Curtis's Dracula on DVD,
which
is pretty good. Jack Palance makes a pretty good Dracula, pretty imposing Dracula. Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. But no, that Frankenstein is really. I highly recommend
I'll
that.
check
I really
it out.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
And now, as a bonus, I mean, I love Young Frankenstein, but we were talking about Penny Dreadful.
Yes,
that portrayal of the monster. I can't even speak to how fantastic and diverse and all the emotions of love, hate, disdain, acceptance. That person did it justice.
And you can't beat that entrance.
Oh, man. We will do a Penny. Okay. What's that, Walker?
Rory Kinnear.
Rory Kinnear. Yeah. Rory Kinnear. We will have to do a Penny Dreadful podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be our Christmas episode.
Right on.
Any last thoughts? Any last comments? Okay, this is the point in our podcast where we usually have our censor sweep, but because we have our special guest with us today, Lord Blood Raw, we want to give you an opportunity to share with the audience webpage, Twitter, Facebook, upcoming shows. You have a very strong presence on this thing that they have on planet Earth called a television. Why don't you go ahead and share with us and plug some of how can we find you?
Well, yeah, television's a primitive form of entertainment at best, but I would invite everyone to check out Lord Blood-Raw's Nerve-Wracking Theater. It's my syndicated TV series in which I present the best, worst, and wildest horror and science fiction films ever made. You can the best way to find it is to go to lordbloodrah.com, LORDBLOODRAH.com. Go to the TV schedule and you can check out the various streaming options and TV stations that you can catch that on. Check out the website and look around, and there are various other things on there too you might find interesting. As far as live shows go, it's very fortuitous. We're talking about Universal horror films. As a matter of fact, this is my 10th year in a row of doing shows at the Chenard Winery in Castro Valley, California. As a matter of fact, that's the very first place I ever presented a horror film. That's the birthplace of Lord Blood-Raw, so to speak. And this year, the 2018 season is the 10th season. And coming up September 1st, Saturday, September 1st, I am showing the original Dracula and the original Frankenstein.
Fantastic.
In a double feature. And these are really great, unique events because it's outdoors. Doors open at 6 o'clock. The show isn't until like 8:30 or dark because it's outside. Pack a picnic. Bring it in. You can taste and purchase award-winning wines. Enjoy your wine with your picnic, and then we launch into the show. So they're very unique and fun shows to do.
Great.
Yeah.
What if you never drink wine?
You'll start that night.
These are good. These are good enough to make an exception for it. Yes, right.
There are other options there for you.
Yes.
Okay, let me ask as far as like conventions or anything coming up.
Well, we just had our 7th Creatures Con, and that was a roaring success. And we'll be back next year. We're thinking probably in the same venue. We're not quite sure.
Okay.
Plans are still being made for the 2019 Creatures Con, but it's, for those of you who don't know, it's a convention dedicated to classic and camp horror and science fiction films, horror hosts and monster kid culture. And over the years, because this is 2019 will be our 8th year of doing it, we've developed quite a few interesting features of the convention. It's a unique convention in that we really emphasize the programming and the shows that happen on the stage.
Right.
This last year, as a matter of fact, in 2017, I was lucky enough to interview Caesar from the Planet of the Apes while we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes.
Right.
But our ongoing features are Mega Chiller Theater, in which we take a classic horror film and a whole host of horror hosts present it. So it's essentially a late night movie with a number of horror hosts instead of just one horror host presenting it.
Right.
And we've also resurrected something that Bob Wilkins created called the Monster Movie Quiz. And we do that live on stage. It's basically a panel game show. We have celebrities up on the stage and we test their knowledge of classic horror and science fiction. And at the end of the thing, they pick names out of a hat of audience members, and the audience members get the prizes.
It's a lot of fun.
And of course, John Stanley is back as the expert, as Bob had him in the original, and it's very fun. And we're hoping to add more regular features as Creatures Con progresses.
Right. And I recommend you guys take a chance, go out there, see the shows, follow Lord Blood-Raw. There's a whole bunch of good stuff going on throughout the year. On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.